The Water and Sanitation Department says the shortages in parts of the country are due to a number of factors. These include poor infrastructure, dry reservoirs, and in some cases, allegations of sabotage. This comes as Gauteng and KZN face prolonged water challenges. In fact, the South African Human Rights Commission recently released its final report and recommendations on this, following an investigation into water challenges specifically in KZN. That report revealed, amongst other things, that there is evidence of deteriorating state of water and sanitation infrastructure in fact, most KZN municipalities. Let's unpack this for you now. Bring in Deputy Water and Sanitation Minister David Mahlobo, who joins us via our video link this morning. Deputy Minister, it's lovely to have you on the program. Thanks very much indeed for your time. You know, Senzo Mkhunu, who's the minister in your portfolio, tried to engage some residents in Johannesburg yesterday, and let's face it, he received a less than warm reception from many frustrated residents who've been without water for weeks. Let's begin by just addressing what kind of immediate steps are being taken by the department to make sure that these people have access to the most basic service, which is water.
Thank you very much, Ayanda, and to all your viewers across the length and breadth of our land. Firstly, let's just join the leadership of our country, the President, to convey our sincere condolences to the number of people that have lost lives due to the inclement weather, the flooding in the Western Cape, and our thoughts and prayers are with their families. The situation of water is a very emotive issue, Ayanda, because you can't live without water. And the situation, if there is no water, there is no life. And the agitation and the irritation by the citizen is actually justified. We must indicate that a number of our municipalities are struggling. And the Minister of Water and the Minister of Culture have taken a decision to be closer to them, to support them, because a number of them can't perform the water services function. Here in Gauteng, our engagement with Gauteng, even very late last night, we've made a decision that, one, we are going to support the municipalities to stabilize the water provisioning, because if you look, most of the reservoirs here in Gauteng are below the normal requirement of between 60 to 70%, and we've asked Rainwater to work very closely with these municipalities to ensure that these reservoirs are actually pushed to a level where people can have access to water, but at the very same time, those who are staying in high-lying areas, they can have water. But our understanding is that government is not going to be able to solve this water challenge without the cooperation of citizens. One of the things we saw, the reservoirs are down in certain instances to zero, or some of them below 40%. There's been a high consumption in Gauteng since the beginning of the summer season. And the consumption in this province is running at 300 liters per capita per day, compared to the South African average of 274. But also that is still high because the world average is 175. Then there is an issue on how those who are managing the system must manage it properly, because the issues of power supplies and the interruption, when there's a dip in terms of the pumping, it takes time to be able to create the necessary pressure and remove even the airlocks from the valve systems. Then there is issue of vandalism that we must handle together with our own people. But in Gauteng, they must also invest in new infrastructure, to more reservoirs, more distribution system, accelerate their projects, because the population 10 years ago were less than 11 million. And today we're more than 16.2 million. These are some of the issues that we've agreed with them. And the last 2 points, they must be in a position to apply bylaws. There are people here on all of our country that are using water unwisely, they are irrigating, doing any other things. Therefore, let's impose restriction. Then they must fix the leaks. And then the other issues, we must be in a position to get those who are managing the system to manage it well, because some of these managers, technically, they don't have the right skills, for an example, on how to use the telemetry to have the proper water balance, how do you use pressure reducing valves? Because if you can see on the telemetry, that you are using more, you need to be able to reduce, and especially during the night flows.
Yeah, so Deputy Minister, can I come in there in the interest of time? You know, I hear you pointing at local government officials, municipal officials as well. You mentioned that this is an emotive issue, and part of that is because it's not a new issue at all. And that's going to raise questions about what kind of accountability government is willing to take at a national level, in a context where, for instance, reports that were published some time ago speak of Durban as an example, losing about 35% of their water to theft and illegal connections. That might also speak to why the South African consumption per capita is so high. It might not necessarily be because people are, drinking the water or using it, but because we're losing so much of it to theft and leakages.
We are correct. That's why we welcome these reports. Whether it's a report by the South African Human Rights Commission to KwaZulu-Natal State of Water, whether it's a report here in Gauteng around the Roy Valley and other systems, we must admit that government, in as much as we expanded access to basic services, one of the matters we neglected, Ayanda, we are correctly saying, is the issue of operation and maintenance, because these assets and the technologies that we use, some of them, they are ranging between 40 to 70 and 80 years old. They have totally collapsed. The Minister of Water and Sanitation with Minister of Culture, they are engaging the Minister of Finance, because some of these municipalities, they don't have the money to be able to replace the old infrastructure. And it's one of our biggest tasks that the grants like the Regional Park Infrastructure Grant, your WISIC, your MIC, must be used a certain portion to fix those pipes, because when you fix those pipes, you will have water available. But when the water is available, then you will have the revenue that you need. But in certain instances, we've seen that if these municipalities are not assisted, we are bringing our water boards as an example. A big water board like Rainwater, Umgeni, Utubela, to use their own balance sheets so that they can be able to fix the infrastructure, collect the revenue. In KwaZulu-Natal, eThekwini as an example, they are concluding a discussion between eThekwini and Umgeni on how Umgeni must manage those wastewater systems for a determined period and use their own budget so that they can solve the problem. Here in Gauteng, Emfuleni were doing the same. Rainwater and Emfuleni, they are going to be signing an agreement where you replace all those old pipes that are leaking more than 60%. Then there's going to be an income coming through. But citizens will have enjoyed their rights to have access to water and the benefits of water.
Yeah, you've conceded that part of the challenge here is that there is sabotage involved. And I wonder, in instances where we can say without a doubt that, in fact, there are saboteurs working, how many people have been held accountable? Have cases been opened? Have investigations given us names and individuals who are behind this in an effort, of course, to ensure that we stave any kind of repeat of these incidents?
There are cases that have been opened, and most of our municipalities, with our supporters, the two ministries, we have increased security. One of the things that has happened, we're spending more money on security on the basis that there are organized gangs and criminals who are stealing ferrous and non-ferrous material, especially the cables. And that causes most of our problems, so we don't have issues of availability of water. Working with cyber crime intelligence, they are working on that part. Then there's another part of the sabotage that we're handling it in terms of engagement, also working with law enforcement agencies. Those who are demanding business opportunities, demanding 80% that the project can't proceed, interfere with the infrastructure. And the last component is an internal job, where some of these people interfere with the line in terms of the asset, in terms of the valves, they disrupt them, on the basis that some officials in government are colluding with service providers to provide water through the tendering system rather than water that is going to be provided through the system and get revenue, because water through water tendering is a non-revenue water. We can't charge people by giving water through that issues of supply through water tendering.
And are these officials known to the department?
Well, these officials, they don't belong to the department. That's why we're using cooperative governance and working with SALCA. They are belonging to municipalities. Hence, we are saying that municipalities must tighten their issues, have the security plan, have integrity assessment of some of these officials, including the vetting of service providers, because we know where it is the hotspot. And most instances, there has also been provision of security, as we are saying.
Yeah.
And it's our role just to support them, oversee that they do what they are supposed to do as full authorities in terms of issues of employment relations.
You know, often as we make sense of how things got so bad when it comes to our electricity supply, many experts point to the fact that the warning signs have been there for decades. Some researchers who work with water infrastructure are warning us today that if we don't do what needs to be done, what is the disaster insofar as load shedding is concerned may very well happen with our water supply. What assurance are you able to give the public today of our ability to prevent that from happening? Because as was the case with electricity, we were warned, the infrastructure is bad, you're not keeping up with population growth, heat waves are on the horizon, naturally people are going to consume a whole lot more electricity and water. What assurance are you able to give the South African public today that, in fact, we won't in the next 10 years speak of a load shedding stage 6, this time in relation to water?
With respect to water, the experts are partially correct to a certain degree, but they should also be in a position to understand that in terms of the water value chain, one of the things that we can assure South Africans is that we're not going to run out of water in terms of water security, because government has invested a lot over the last 29 years around issues of bulk infrastructure. Every province, in terms whether it's KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, there's been a lot of investment, and including planned investment, that a number of these projects were doing them, actually amounting more than 110 billion for the next 10 years, so that we can guarantee South Africans that water will be available. Our biggest challenge that we are attending now, because we've brought back our indicators, like your blue drop, your green drop, and your no drop. The quality of water is deteriorating in South Africa. Therefore, we must be able to reverse the trend, because the water will be there, but it will not be fit for the uses by various users. But even if it is there, it's going to be very expensive to treat that particular issue. Therefore, we're working on that particular component. Then on the existing infrastructure, which is the no drop, the issues of management of that asset and the investment, that's why we're talking about re-engineering our grants, so that we can be able to ensure that these assets are replenished, they are replaced, so that they can be sweated and give a new life. But at the very same time, we must insist on water conservation and demand management. The behavior of our people, especially those in the mid strata and those who are high earning, it must change, like it changed in the Western Cape, where in Cape Town, we're able to use the issues of water usage, liters per capita per day. It's possible that we can do that. Lastly, we must be in a position to ensure that we work together with citizens who will be able to turn the tide. If we don't do those sets of actions, we will not be able to conquer this. But we are very confident that local government, since it was democratized, it has done a lot. There are missteps and there are corrective actions, and we should be able to turn the corner.
Absolutely. It's one thing to ask citizens to do their part, but I suppose many will be wondering whether government is also pulling their weight insofar as this is concerned. David Mahlobo, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. David Mahlobo, the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation. Thanks once again indeed.